So I think we're live now-ish. I like loading as it goes live. So yeah, hello everyone. My name is Omorogbe. I'm the founder of Coders of Color. We're not for profit, aimed at getting the next generation of young people of color into tech through workshops, but also through role models such as the wonderful Efosa that we have today, which I'm really excited to chat to. And I think we should just get started, get straight into it. Who are you? Give us an introduction to yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Efosa Omorogbe. I'm a UX UI designer and a front-end developer. I've been in design for over 10 years now, and I've been a developer for the past three years. I work full-time for a startup called HiveMind, and we are a company that helps, that works in big data and helps other companies just aggregate and organize their information.
Wow, okay, cool. Where does design come into that?
Yeah. So basically, I'm working on I'm a front end developer there and UX designer there. So I work on making sure all of the applications are basically up to scratch from a user experience standpoint, because I was their first UX hire. And when I came on board, the applications were struggling in terms of helping users complete specific goals. So it's my job to improve that aspect of our applications.
Okay, so you said you're a front-end developer and UX UI designer. What are all those like? Is UX UI? I'm hearing now that UX UI is kind of its own. It encompasses both, and they expect you to have both skills. So would you say that's kind of two jobs that people can have, or more three jobs?
So it's actually it's three jobs, but I've got all the skills for all of them. So UI is a separate job, UX is its own job, and front end development is its own job. UI is just mainly about like the way you design things and how they look, and you don't have to be a designer to be a UX person. You could be a UX researcher, because UX is all about gathering data, understanding user problems, and coming up with solutions that help solve those problems. So it's just about data gathering and collection basically, and then front end development is just all about coding, gathering all of that, the UI stuff, the UX stuff, and creating and putting that into code so that users can actually interact with it.
Okay, so there's research in UX.
Yes. There's a whole lot of
Wow, can you
research.
tell us more about that? What's that?
So yeah, UX is that's why it's very important to understand psychology, because everything that involves a user means that you're going to have to understand how those users navigate through that app or service. So you need to understand human behavior in context to that application or service that you're using, and if you don't, and you also need to be able to collect data as well. So if users are having a problem with your apps or service, you need to be able to have numerical data that pinpoints those problems, whether that's doing user interviews or having video sessions about people actually navigate through your application. So you have to collect data all around the problem, and then the UX designers part, this designer part now, is then to come up with solutions, taking in all of that information and creating a solution that then solves that problem, and then they pass that on to the front end developer to go and solution.
Wow, okay. And out of those, which one do you prefer the most, as in your current job, the front end bit or the UX UI bit?
I like all of them the same, because I'm a problem solver. I love the ability to when there's a problem I'm faced with, I get so excited at the opportunity to solve it. And doing UI, UX, and front end, they're all about problem solving. The UX problem is understand, okay, there's a pain point here. How do we research around that pain point to then figure out what's actually going on? The UI part is then, okay, how do we create a solution that then solves that pain point? And then the front end developers, okay, how do I take those solutions and actually code them? I mean, as you probably know yourself, too, there's a lot of problems that you come into when you're doing coding, and basic coding is just solving problems all the time. So,
Oh, so coding and solving problems. Well, how would you describe UX and UI then?
well, UX is understanding what the problem is, and then UI is making that problem seamless for users to interact with.
Oh, okay. What else else was I going to say? So I remember last time, because we've had this conversation before. So today we're not going to go through your whole journey into tech. If you want that, stay tuned for when that comes out. I remember you saying you learned React in like 3 days for this
Yes,
job.
yes.
You got this job.
Yeah,
So can you just give us some insight into
yeah,
yourself, your character,
yeah.
and how that has impacted your career shifts in general?
So I'm a person that when I want to do something, I make sure I find any way possible, the quickest way possible to kind of like get me to being able to do that. Like I started off as a designer, then I remember I wanted to be an animator and nobody was kind of like helping me teach. So I taught myself on YouTube how to do animations, and then I wanted to go into editing, so I taught myself how to edit. Then I wanted to go into writing, taught myself how to write, and then when coding was if you only release that video, you find out about my coding story. So when it came to about this job that I wanted to get, I was so determined of, okay, I really want this job, but I didn't know what React was. And they gave me an assignment to do on the Thursday, and I had to hand that assignment on the Monday. And that was it was kind of like beginner's guide on learning React. And I remember I was so stuck not understanding what I was doing because I had known a different coding language called Ionic, which is different to React. And I couldn't wrap my head around all of the ways of thinking for React, and I almost gave up on the Friday. Literally, I was about to message my colleague that I'm working with to let them know, yeah, I don't think I can do this. I'm sorry, guys,
Wow.
I'm not to scratch. But then a moment hit my head. I'm like, you know what? Efosa, you've like been able to teach yourself all this other stuff. Like, just relax, go to sleep, and then let's try again the next day. And literally, I kept going at it again on Saturday, still couldn't figure it out. Then Sunday, the moment clicked for me, where I was like, I understand it now. And then that's when I was able to then submit it. I finalized the code and submitted to them on Monday. And yeah, I learned how to code in like 3 days. I mean, learned React in like 3 days
Wow.
basically. So yeah.
Wow, I can't not react in 3 days. So do you feel like that you can, I know you kind of got to a point where you had to tell yourself, actually let's just give it a try. Have you done that in other parts of your career or other parts of just changing things that you're focused
Yeah,
on?
yeah. I remember more specifically when I was a designer, I wanted to learn how to do what they call typographic art, where basically it's text that kind of like formulates like illustrates the picture of your face. And I couldn't find on Google anywhere to do it. I'd go into forums, I'd ask my teachers at university, and nobody could point me into direction. I would watch YouTube videos and I would get stuck. I watch some YouTube videos and I would get stuck, and I'm like, this isn't what I would look at my piece and I'll look at their piece, and I'm like, this is not what I wanted to do. And I almost gave up to that point. I was like, you know what, let me try it again. So I, instead of looking at the YouTube video, I just took the skills that they had given me and then applied it in my own way. And then eventually I was able to like break through and then create my own typographic art. And then I had the similar problem when it came to like animation. I didn't know how to become like a good animator. I didn't know how to use the tools. I was asking people. Nobody was really pointing me in the right direction. But then I'm like, I was doing it for like a good 3 to 6 months and I wasn't getting anywhere. Then I just told myself, look, like you've done this before. Just sit down, focus, and like really practice on doing animation. And then I found there was a website I found. Cinema Food. No, I can't remember the website now. But yeah, that I used to help teach myself how to animate. And then from there, I was like, okay, I know how to animate now. So I acquired that skill. And yeah, I was very pleased with myself for doing that basically.
Okay, so two questions. What is typographic art? And then the second one is what is animation? And then I'm going to add on a third one, which is how do they fit into UX UI design?
So typographic art is basically when you're writing text on the screen, you're using what they call type in designers, and we call that typography. And typographic art is basically you want to, instead of drawing the person's face, you're using the text to then draw their face. So yeah,
Whoa.
so what I would do is that I would create lines, and then over those lines I would write the text that would then kind of like draw over their face, and then I would add the color in to kind of like blend in and mesh their skin. So yeah, over time I found a faster way of doing it. Before it would take me like 3 to 5 days. Then I was able to like be able to do it in like one day because of new techniques that I figured out. And when it comes to animation, animation is just being able to like make your art move. How can you make it move across the screen? And it took me a while to kind of like understand how to do that very well. So there were like very easy ways of like, okay, making sure that a square can be from the x-axis to another point on the x-axis, and then you can get into more intricate animations. And the way all of that kind of fits into UX design is all about what's the experience you're trying to create. If the experience of incorporating typographic art and then some little motion in that helps the user illustrate a point, and that helps the user understand it better, then that's UX. You're improving the UX for the user because your typographic art and animation help them understand the information a little bit better.
Okay. I remember in our session, was it a couple of days ago, we had that UX, the difference between UX and UI and the fact that they marry together was with the demonstration of ketchup. And it was how the UI is how things look. And so there was that like glass, you know, the glass bottle for ketchup, and there's the plastic one that you squeeze. And so they both look okay, but the glass one, it's much harder to get the ketchup out.
You have to like really tap the top, really like shake it,
Yeah. Whereas the plastic one, you can just squeeze. And so the UX and the UI are good for the plastic one, whereas only the UI is good for the glass one. And I was like, wow, that's such a good demonstration. So yeah, UI is very much like visual, and I know we've spoken about that.
So UX doesn't just apply to like digital. It's not just stuck to the digital realm. As you were just explaining, UX is anything a user can interact with, whether it's a doorknob, whether it's a light switch, whether it's your faucet on your sink, and even like the ketchup bottle. It's all about the stuff that what makes it easier for the user to achieve a specific goal. As you can see, for the person achieving the goal of the ketchup, is okay. How can I get the ketchup out of the bottle as fast as possible into my food?
Yeah. So my question to you based on that then is, would you ever work for like a food company or anything like that? Do you feel like you have tech specific skills? Or do you feel like if somebody employed you at like a yogurt company, you could definitely
Yeah, I think because I started off as a graphic designer. When I was in uni, they taught us all about most of the graphic design course was all about psychology and understanding how users think, how people think, how we incorporate colors, shapes, semantics, and semiotics. So it's not just once you understand the basics of how humans take in information, it's not just limited to a specific field. That fair enough, I'm a tech person right now, but I can do this for a crisp brand. I can do it for a hair brand. I could do it for interior designers. I could do it for farmers. I could do it anywhere because I understand the fundamentals. And every product, because we're all humans and we make products for us to use, it's always going to be human-centered approach. It's the case that we're doing stuff for animals, and that's a bit different. So I don't really have the expertise in understanding animals as much as I do understand humans. So, yeah.
So anything, as long as it's not like to do with animals, you can do it. So then my question is, would you do that? And if so, why? If not, why not?
Would I what, sorry?
Branch out of tech, do crisps, do suitcases one day, like whatever.
I mean, I really love the problems I solve at work every day. I mean, like I think the thing that really drives me and really pushes me is just having a very interesting problem to solve. So I guess like as long as there's an interesting problem that motivates me and pushes me to like wake up every morning, then I don't mind what industry that's in.
Oh, so if anyone wants to sell crisps, you might have much higher day rate than you're used to, but I'm sure he can pull it off. That's really interesting, because I had a feeling you'd say no, but that's me assuming things, which is not good. But I had a feeling you'd say no, I love tech and tech is the best. But
well, the only thing I will say about tech is that one of the main reasons why I started to go into developers, that I just understood that tech is like the future of where everything is heading. And if you think about coders, I think of them like as the architects of our future, the architects of this world, because everything we use incorporates technology, and coders are the people that make those technologies. So we architect the future. That's why, okay, there's a lot of power in being able to orchestrate how the human race is now going to be using technology.
yeah, I guess so. I guess that's a good point as well. What's the other thing I was going to say? was going to ask about something else. You've spoken about front end, UX, UI, where you are now. I guess one question that everyone has, because gonna be frank here, everyone's talking about UX UI on Twitter, and everyone's like trying to get into UX UI on Twitter. Do you have any advice for anyone? Like, say me, for example, who's on the opposite end of the spectrum, and I'm like, I want to get into UX UI. Do you have some actionable steps of things that I should do from now till my first job?
I think the best thing, and this is what a lot of people and even like companies really lack on that determine if you're going to be successful on a user standpoint, is that you just need to speak to users every day. You need to understand your users as much as you understand the code that you're making for the application, because you fair enough, you're coding it, but they're the ones that are going to be using it. So if you kind of want to be best friends with your users, as close as you can get to your users, is basically the goal when it comes to wanting to do UX. So even if you're not a UX designer yet, just having conversations with those people who use your services, your applications on a more frequent basis will help open your mind to the kind of problems they face. And that will then, if you have a creative brain, that will give you solutions. You start thinking of solutions even when you're coding, like, oh, but wait a second, these users have these problems, so maybe me focusing this type of code might not help those users. Because you really want to, that's like the best thing you can do, even if you're not like a professional UX designer or anything. So speak to users as much as possible. Speak to those who face the problems of the apps that or services that you're trying to provide for them.
What if you're not trying to provide a service? Because I assume that in the company that you work for, you're not providing the service, the end service. You're just designing something and making sure that the user's experience is the best and that they kind of follow that user story into subscribing to a service or, doing whatever they do. So if you just like the design, you're like, I'm not here for the coding or I'm not here for the providing the service bit, what would you advise for someone who just wants to?
It's still the same thing, because you got to think of it this way: is that yeah, you like the design, you're designing it, but who are the people that are going to be using it? So you always have to think about who is the end result of that piece of design or that piece of work that you're about to go out and make. If that's not you, then you need to make sure that you understand those people better than you understand that design, because they're the ones that are going to be using it most of the time. So if you don't have an understanding of the pain points they have with your current designs, then you're basically going to be you're basically working in the dark. You're working in the dark without knowing where the best solution is right now. And the only way to know the best solution is to speak and test and be close with your users. So yeah, you always have to be, if it's an end user product, if it's something that is for someone else, then you have to be as close to that person or that end user as much as you can.
Okay, so then my question, again, just to break it down, is would you come up with an initial design, something you think looks cute, and then ask the users, or really incorporate them into the process and ask things from them before
So
you
that's
start?
actually something that we've been struggling with at work, because we don't have a lot of users, and because we don't have a lot of users, it's very hard to get like a conclusive understanding of problems that people are facing. So because me, I have a lot of experience in UX design, and there's lots of other types of companies out there in the world that do something similar. I can kind of lean on that information, lean on that data to then see how those users have like reacted to their designs, and kind of like take that as information for me to then improve on and then kind of test with our small subset of users. So we're never going to get very conclusive data, but we can get a general understanding from how the world uses something similar, to then go and then improve that for our own sets of users. So that's like the second. If you really can't like connect with your users, you can go look at example to other kind of services that are similar to yours, and understanding how their users use those, what their pain points with those apps or services or designs.
Cool. And would I need to make a portfolio? Is a portfolio really important?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say, well, that's the thing about being a UX designer. Portfolio in the traditional sense of just having pictures and videos is very, very pointless, because anybody can create something that looks good. You've probably seen it loads of times, like somebody's shared something on Twitter that's really nice, but then in actuality, if somebody was to then use that design, how do you know if it's successful? So that's why I don't really bother with having like a portfolio as in a traditional sense. What I bother with is having case studies. Now, case studies are actually grounded in actual evidence. So my case studies are, I've created a design, I've tested with users, there's an outcome and there's a solution and there's evidence of that solution. For example, my previous work, I worked for National Rail, and while I was there working for National Rail, I made sure I kept a case study of all of the products I worked on. For example, I improved the National Rail's mobile journey planner to convert for $1 million plus in revenue that they wasn't doing before. And I can show them from my designs, we tested with X amount of users and increased revenue by this amount. And I can use that in my portfolio now rather than saying that I created a design and this is how it looked. So that doesn't, which one would you say is much stronger? Me saying that I have a fancy design, or me showing you I have a design and it helped increase sales by X amount?
Yeah, definitely. Of course, I think a case study is better. I'm big on numbers and data and stuff. So definitely, I guess with that though, um, wouldn't you need some technical expertise? Because it's all well and good if something looks amazing, but I think someone like you has that strength of being able to code, and so knowing, having that knowledge in your head whilst designing something. It's great if an app looks amazing. It's great if you're simulating this technology that doesn't yet fully exist or is not yet tangible. It looks amazing, but does it actually work, or can it ever be implemented and things like that?
Yeah.
So, like, where's the line between being
So
futuristic or being cool and just
So I'll give you an example. I can only give an example of me. When I only learned to design, I mean code in the past few years. I got my first UX job in 2017, at the beginning of 2017, so before I started coding, and I was a National Rail. I didn't know how to code anything, but what I'd done that made me get that job is that I went out to people. I created a solution. I tested that solution, just designs, pen and paper, even like creating something that was on a simple web browser, and I took that to actual users at a train station and got their feedback on it. So you don't necessarily have to actually create your designs in a coding perspective. Even if it's just pen and paper and you're showing it to people, you're having conversations and you're recording those conversations. That's what UX. That's what is really what people look for in UX design, is being able to gather raw data around the solution that you've come up with. That solution doesn't have to be perfect. It can be as futuristic or as old school as you want. The whole point is being able to gather data about, okay, what do people think about it? Are people using it? How often does that improve any kind of metrics in terms of how are more people using it? Are sales improving? Or would people say that they would use it more? Would people say they pay for it more? It's just basically, so UX is really about gathering data to support your designs as much as possible. Because if you think about it, especially because sometimes I freelance a lot, I have a lot of people that come to me wanting to make apps, and making apps is expensive. So if you're going to make something that's expensive, would you want to have all of the data to really back your decision on spending that amount of money? So that's why whenever I come to people that say they want to jump straight into the app, I push them back and say, go do some research into a problem, understand what users are saying about, and see if you can get them to pay you money before you even build anything. That's a very strong indicator of that they want what you're about to build.
okay, interesting. So UX is about talking to people and getting their feedback. And if you don't have anything concrete, it's about seeing if their opinion is better than what already exists, or if they're willing to use something that doesn't yet exist. And in the other hand, um, if it does, okay, I feel like I feel
So it's
like
almost
I
like
understand.
it's almost like customer service. It's about what can you do to provide the best experience for that user that's in front of your face. Now, the thing about where UX comes into play is that you have to do all of that without being present. For example, there's a reason why you might use Twitter a lot. There's a reason why you might be using Zoom a lot. If UX is the customer service point, but without the person being present. So what can you do with your application or service without you being there that can make the user have the best possible experience ever? The
Wow,
way you can get to that.
you just up with these one-liners every day, one-liner.
Yeah, and the best way you can come to that point is by understanding your users. I mean, that's like I pride myself in being able to like make life easier for people by just I know what their problem is and really drilling down into it so that I can come up with the solution.
Okay, so when you say understanding your users, I'm thinking of things like surveys. And when you're starting out, there could be friends, family, people that you know. But is that all? Do you just send out surveys and hope for a response, or like how exactly do you go about that
So
user
yeah,
stuff?
it's a lot easier when you're bigger, because when you're sending out something like a survey, you can get more people to respond to it. But if you're someone that's starting out, it's a lot harder to gather that kind of data, and it might not make so much sense to use more automated ways of gathering data. For example, setting up analytics on the platform, or setting up like heat map tracking, because you're not going to be having anybody coming to your service or your designs that haven't been created yet. So the best thing you can do is just actually go know where your users exist, know where they live. It's a case that you're doing a fashion app or a fashion website. You might want to go and just hang around the shop and just ask your users questions. And you just want to be able to record that data, literally have it on a spreadsheet or make a note of it on your phone. It's just being able to literally everything. UX is really about data points. It's understanding data points and then letting those data points tell you what problems are and then inspire solutions.
Okay. So now the other thing I'm thinking about is UX. I have a solid understanding now of what that is, and it seems quite different from the UI side. Um, so my first question is, what is the UI side? Then on top of that, do you like it? And how do you work together? If you have one UX person and one UI person, are you always attached at the hip, or how do you divide work if it's two
So
people?
I'm actually both in one. I really, well, I'm kind of more now I'm despising UI by itself, because I have such a sound understanding of UX. Whenever I'm like on Twitter, on places like Behance or anywhere where people post designs, and I
Mhm,
see it getting a lot of praise for this is so cool. Not
mhm,
that the designs are not good, because it does take a lot of years to have good taste in design. But then I understand from a UX perspective, these designs might not work. Fair enough, they're getting a lot of attention, but how do you know they can improve a user's life? So
mhm,
the best way I break down UI and UX is think of UI as think of a makeup artist, and UI is the makeup that they apply onto the person. But the UX is how the makeup artist makes you feel, how they converse with you, are they making you feel comfortable, are they providing you drinks, are they giving you the best conversation, are they making you laugh? That's what the UX part is. UI is just them applying the makeup and making you look pretty.
mhm,
UX is okay, how do they make you feel while they're
mhm.
making you look pretty?
Okay, but say you're more gifted in UX than UI, and the best place is you're in a company, for example, and you have a design, and so it's now like the UI person has done a design, and it's your responsibility to go out, let's say for a train out, to Charing Cross Station and ask people what they think. Would you do that together as a team, or is it more that they pass off the design to you, you get the feedback?
It would actually be the other way around. So the UX person would have already gone out and done research with the people at the train stations, with surveys, with inset questionnaires, and then they would have brought that information and passed it on to the UI designer, saying we need a design that can solve these pain points. And then
Mm.
the UI designer would then go and create a design that meets the brief of those pain points. So the UI designer wouldn't. In some cases, the UI designer might design something first if you haven't got a lot of users, and then you're going to again take that design to then get data, but back to get data to back whether or not that design is good or bad.
But is it a cyclical process? So you've got the feedback, you give it to the UI designer, they implement it. Do you then go back to a train station and
Yeah,
ask
so
them?
basically,
So,
it's a constant process, because you got to think about it this way: are you the same person you are today that you were last year?
absolutely not.
Humans change. We change every day. So fair enough. We might make something today and it solves that pain point right now. But
Mm,
tomorrow something new might come out. For example, Snapchat wasn't around 10 years ago.
mm,
Zoom wasn't around 10 years ago. So our behavior has changed. So because our behavior has changed now, we then have to go and make sure that the solutions we're making are still solving those pain points that these our users are accustomed to.
okay. And like I alluded to before, right now in the job market, which is somewhat existent, do people expect designers or UX UI people to be literally UX stroke UI, or do you still see people hiring exclusively UI designers, for example?
I think most of the job applications I see now are specifically UX, but they expect the UX people to be designers as well. I
Okay.
think where you get more into you, the UX researching side is those roles that are like data scientists and UX researchers, whereas like it's just purely researching and data focused, not really
Mm.
design focused. Now those you find out in more bigger corporations rather than smaller corporations, because you need a lot of users to be able to gather the amount of data that's needed for those roles to be valued.
Okay, because I was going to ask, when you're talking about research and data, and in a big company, would they be working with data analytics or data? I feel like data science might be a bit overkill in a lot of cases.
Yeah, but
Generally.
on a simple form, the UX designer in my role, I can only speak about now. Even in my previous role, my day to day would be that we would right now for my new role actually, I had to set up the analytics where I had to make sure our website was tracking users, our application was tracking users, made sure we had the data that was very clean, that was very clean. Because sometimes internal traffic might plague that data, and we don't want to lie to ourselves about, okay, we have X amount of users doing this and that. So you have to make sure that you clean that data, and then after you've got the data and analytics set up, it's just about analyzing it. Because now analytics have been clean for a good 2 months. It's just okay, let the data build up so you can then analyze user patterns and behaviors.
Okay, so I feel like on the design side, you don't need data every day. I think in general, actually, you don't need data every day. You need it in blocks of time. And I guess within each company, they decide how long they need to then process and reflect and carry on with the process. That's really interesting. Um, what was I going to say? I have another question about. Oh, yeah. So you've described so many different things now. If we look at the train example, you've described like leaving the office and going to ask people questions and then like having meetings with a UI designer, doing that again, but also doing research and doing data analytics and all of this different stuff, which is why I can see, wow, like you're definitely working on something at some point of the year, but it's not necessarily the same thing, which is really interesting. What is your typical day, week, or like quarter looking like in such a role?
When it comes to a UX designer, literally the first when I'm doing that more often now at my current job because I finally got analytics in place. But for my last job, my day to day would just be I would come in the morning, I would check up on our past weeks or just past days usage. Just check up on all of the different types of analytics platforms I get set up. That might be our Google Analytics, that might be our heat map tracking, that might be our video recording tracking, and just seeing what that data is and telling me. And then we also might have some company goals that we're trying to achieve, for example, improving conversion, improving customer satisfaction, improving engagement on a certain page. And then I'll be analyzing those analytics in accordance to those goals. And then I might have set up like the past week a test or an experiment that plans on improving any one of those metrics, and then seeing how that test is going. And as that test is running, I'll then become, okay, what other test can I then come up with? Or what other solution can I come up with to go and then test as a design to improve our conversions, which is us how much money we're getting in, bringing more users to the page, or making them interact with the page a lot more. Yeah, so it's basically it's idea generation. The data you set up your analytics to help you come up with new ways to create those new designs to then go and help your users better use your app or website.
Okay, so you were talking about conversions and how much money you make for the company. Do you have quotas or do you have, um, bars that you have to reach or pass in order to keep
Not
your
not
job?
not not really. I mean, I remember from my last job, we were losing money every quarter, and it was very obvious why we were losing money every quarter because we had a lot of issues with what we call handing off users to, because we was National Rail's website. You go there to search all of the different train companies, train prices, and then you get handed off to their website. We had an issue in making that very smooth, and
Mm.
also along with that, search for train tickets, the way the ticket results are displayed was very, in my opinion, as a UX designer, was very poor for allowing users to really consume that information very quickly and efficiently. So I'd done a lot of my role was to make sure that we could reduce basically the drainage of losing so much money from our website. And I was able to at least improve my time there for the 2 years. I earned them over 16 million plus in extra revenue just from my UX experiments.
Wow. The other thing that I've just realized is with the National Rail example, I used to take the train daily. I used to be one of those like very heavy commuters that relied on National Rail's websites and mobile applications to just get by. And yeah, the website definitely was about a decade behind.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is something like Trainline uses that exact data, but adds a little bit on top. Yeah.
Yeah.
But their UX, their UI
It's so much better.
is
Literally,
with the tool. And so,
it's funny. We had a running joke. We had a running joke at the company about basically if basically National Rail was providing all the other train companies their traffic. So literally, if National Rail went away, Trainline would be the only people that would be selling tickets because nobody goes to Virgin's website to buy their tickets. Everybody comes to National Rail, but everyone else, around 60% of users went to Trainline. Like they basically have a monopoly in the market. And it's funny that you said that the National Rail website was a decade old. And literally, I went to uni in 2011, and that's when they launched their new website. And I started working for them in 2017, and the website was still the same.
wow. Wow. Yeah. So I just think it's that's a prime example of the power of design and how, because I used to think that as well. And sometimes I'm like, I just need to go straight to the source, which is National Rail. But even things like coming back to a website, or if you get redirected to a different train company and come back, your whole website gets upset and so simple things like that do kind of make a difference. And it's so interesting.
UX, and the thing about UX as well is that you might just see it as it's only the UX designer's job, but if you really think about it, like when you got handed off to that train provider's website and then it messed up, the UX design doesn't control that process. That's all development. So the coders control that process. So if the coders understand that that's a pain point, they don't want Node to fix that. And also goes for even like the sales department have basically UX has to be for UX to really work and be efficient in the company to make sure that you're satisfying your users. Everybody has to have UX at the forefront of mind, whether that's the sales team, how they communicate with users, make sure that customer service is top notch, or that's the developers knowing that okay, there's a bug that's causing this problem for users, and we need to fix that. It's in everybody's best interest to have UX at the forefront of their mind, or else your company's really going to be slacking when it comes to getting more users.
Yeah, you literally framed it as UX being integral to the company and really being like what everyone needs. Sales.
Literally, the reason why the successful companies are successful is because their UX is perfect all the way around. The reason Apple is literally the leading company right now is because if you use an Apple device, you click to your MacBook, or you see how everything syncs together so seamlessly. They even give you Apple Care Protection, which is again user experience, because if something breaks, you can easily get it replaced. All of that is user experience, and they thought about that from the ground up all the way through throughout their company.
Yeah, but I mean, try not to get too controversial on this because it's about UX design.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Not that I stand for Apple, but I just know me being a UX designer, like Apple they created what they call a human-centered human-computer interaction guidelines, which they paid a bunch of scientists to come up with. What's the best way to interact with your apps? How to create apps for humans to interact with, and that's why like, Apple devices are so easy to use. Like a baby can even use it compared to like an Android device because HCI guidelines have been built around user behavior, the way users think, and they spent billions and billions of pounds on making sure that they got that right.
yeah, well, what I was gonna say is it's great when you have an amazing UX, but in something like personal, like a phone, a laptop, things that are yours and things that can look the same on the outside but are very different on the inside, you could also argue that there's a loss, like you don't get flexibility there and you don't get personalization. That's also part of the user experience, knowing that I don't know, change my background somehow or rearrange my apps in a certain way.
I mean,
Or
it's a conversation I had recently with a few friends about how, for example, the Apple iOS 14 is now getting widgets, and that's something that the Android ecosystem has had for years. And the way I kind of explain it to him is that fair enough they're getting widgets now, but what's been the number one selling phone for the past 10, 12 years has been the iPhone, and there's a reason because people are satisfied with what they have. Fair enough, Android have a lot of these jam-packed features in their phone, but how many people constantly use that? There's probably like a niche amount of users that use it on a daily basis. There's only a subset of features that people use, and that's what Apple focuses on until it's necessary for those users to now use it. So they probably have an understanding of their user research that widgets is something that's becoming more and more popular for them to now incorporate. So that's the only reason why they be putting in their iPhones or in
I guess
their
so.
operating system.
I guess so, but I feel like being homogenous equaling good user experience is quite like daunting because that's what people say, you know, Apple release maybe two variations of laptops a year, two variations of phone a year. And so you have millions of people in the world with the same phone. And it's funny how that's successful, how we can't express ourselves through our goods. Um,
I guess the way to think about it is that there's a level of expression you get with what they've already given you, and that's satisfied. We could say this is a random number, more than half, or a good three for 2/3 of the users of those phones. So that other third is like it's not a big enough problem for them to be like, let's make this a very completely open platform so we can sell that third of users, which don't really increase their sales by that much.
yeah, I feel like what you're gaining in simplicity and kind of the important things working is what you're losing in your pocket. And like you're paying more for things to just work and for things to just work well. Um, but going from that actually, and what you're saying about human computer interaction, what is human computer interaction? And how did like what did Apple look at and how did that follow through to their products?
So human from on a general basis, human computer interaction is literally how humans interact with apps on their phones on a small on a finger on a touchscreen device basically, and just understanding like before we used to have stylus like back in the day when we were kids, we used to have styluses that had it and you had the capacitive touchscreens where it's very hard to like press on screens. Apple did a lot of research and realized why don't we make it very easy for you to just tap with a finger rather than having to use a device. Well, the only device you need is your person, and they did a lot of research around, and there's other stuff, for example, like semiotics and like colors and shapes, and there's a reason why they incorporate certain colors in their user interface, and they have like motion to kind of like illustrate a interaction. So there's a lot. I can't really state off the top of my head, but they've got like this 1,000 page document on their website of all the research they've done for human interaction.
Wow, I think I have to get out and share it afterwards. That's really interesting. And so, in the community, is that seen as some sort of revered piece of text that
Yeah,
everyone refers to?
so basically for iOS design or Apple mobile design, that is the standard that Apple pushes when you're designing any kind of application for their device. Now that's not a standard that's used for Android devices because Android devices is owned by Google, and Apple doesn't really care about what you do in Google. So they care about what's done on their own devices, and their research is solely based on their operating system and how you can efficiently use their operating system. How you can design for users to efficiently use their operating system. So a lot of work was made to making it so simple to use that you don't really need a guide to understand how to like open up your phone to open up an app. Like if you showed a baby, gave a bit of newborn baby an iPhone, the first thing they do is use their finger to touch it because it's been designed that way for them to understand how to navigate through it. And then that motion and that interaction then teaches them how to use it, and then they now learn new things that it teaches them. It's like a cycle. So the phone teaches you, and then you then improve the phone to then teach you new things.
That's so interesting. Because I know some people can study it in conjunction with whether it's computer science or something else as part of their degree. And I just wondered, do you have any idea of like the subjects within it? So when you talk about touching yourself, is it more of an engineering thing, or is it more of a kind of
So
psychology
it got, yeah, it's psychology. All of it is down to psychology. I remember the area that we touched on at work at uni was semiotics and semantics. Now, if I remember, I keep always get the two mixed up. I remember the as young as when you're first born baby and you see yourself in the mirror, the first thing you see is shape. You see a shape. That's why you kind of align a circle being the head and a rectangle being the body. And also when it comes to like semiotics, the reason why a lot of people see red as dangerous because the first time you cut yourself from a very young age, it hurts, and the first thing that comes out is blood, and then that kind of reinforces that negative idea of, okay, this is something bad that I should stay away from doing in the future. So that's why stop signs are red, all of the warning signs are yellow, and stuff that kind of caution you are either yellow or red, because those are stuff that you're familiar with from as young as a baby that teach you about how to interact with the world. So
Wow.
semantics and semiotics are the two areas.
That's so. Is that a lot of experiments on babies then?
Well, I remember Sigmund Freud, I believe, I remember we learned about him. I think about it was about babies and kind of like I think he's the one that did the stuff about shapes. I think that's semantics, and then aligning shapes to linking shapes to the human bodies and what certain shapes mean. For example, I could draw a circle and put two eyes and a line, and you see that as a face, even though that's not a face. Because you understand the rough outlines of that and can quickly relate that to a human face. So it's about how quickly can you link stuff. Like there's been a lot of work done around how iconography with text is a lot faster at getting information to a user than just having an icon or text separately. But if you combine the two together, then they're much stronger. And also the icon is much stronger than text alone. But then also you can get very bad icon designs that are very vague. So there's other areas that help improve icon design and text design and just how you deliver information to users.
That's so interesting, especially with the baby thing. I feel like, does that mean that new parents are the most likely to make breakthroughs with all of this stuff if they have kids around them all the time?
Maybe.
Be testing them, especially if you do stuff like human computer interaction. I've got 6 months with this child to test all of everything.
But then the thing that's very important about UX design is context. Like UX design, when the stuff that you're just doing is understanding user behavior, the where it becomes UX design is now, for example, the goal for you when you're choosing a video platform is that you wanted to easily stream and connect with the interviewer on your laptop. Now that was the goal. So UX is all about, okay, how can I make you achieve that goal as best, give you the best experience and achieve that goal as possible. So UX is very goal centered. So whether that goal might be increasing conversion, helping the user open an iPhone, helping the user find a YouTube video, helping the user do X, Y, Z, it's always goal centered, goal focused.
Yeah, do you know what? Even when you're talking about this, I'm thinking, should we do a little Zoom case study? Should we do a live case study?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Studies with Efosa. Let's have a little segment. So with something like Zoom, I'm gonna speak to you as a user because that's in all of this design stuff. That's as far as I am at the moment. I learned how to use Figma yesterday. That's about it. My experience. So what I've read about it is that the guy that, like the CEO or the CTO of Zoom, the founder of Zoom, he worked for Cisco WebEx, and he got a lot of complaints from all these customers, all the clients. So that's, I guess, the UX part already. And he tried to make changes within the company. He didn't feel like he was really listened to. So he went and he had all of that experience already and kind of all of that data, which is exactly what you're saying. And he decided that one, he wanted it to mimic a real human conversation. So he ensured that he minimized the kind of lag between it. And I can't remember the other thing. But some people say that Zoom is very cluttered and Zoom like has a higher barrier to entry just to know how to use it. What is your case study of Zoom? And aside from the obvious global pandemic, why do you think Zoom of all platforms, because there's Skype that we all know, there's Google Hangouts that we also all know, even Facebook have a kind of chat, like a video chat thing that's already built in. what is your case study on Zoom, and why do you think it
Oh,
exploded?
when I kind of think of like UX, I kind of take it as how seamless is it for you to interact with the application. On that kind of aspect, it's actually very difficult for Zoom because already you have to download the application. I mean, if I was really saying okay, UX is king, then I would really go for Google Hangouts because you just do it on your web browser. But there's a reason why Google Hangouts isn't really as popular as Zoom because Zoom, I think Zoom, what they really aspire or the best in is their video quality connection. I know when I'm using the Skype or using the Google, I try Google Hangouts on the web and the video quality is really poor. So even like this right now, it's almost like it's HD directly from my video camera. And they were they were really good at making sure they can deliver the most latency free and best video quality to their users. And even when it comes to like having multiple users, the way they like switch between users, like that was a new thing that Zoom kind of introduced. So it's like when you're having multiple persons talking on the screen, not having to know if there are other viewers on the chat, they don't have to click through to know who's speaking. Automatically does that for you. So it's reducing that need for you to worry about it. Reduces that tension and that friction of you having to like scroll through and then click on a person's face and then signal them and make them the main chat. So there's quite a few things that Zoom gets right that users care about. So as you can see, users don't care about having to download the application and to be able to chat to video call. They care about okay, how good is the connection, how efficient is the latency of chatting to a person. How is other stuff like if there are multiple people in the room, can I see them all at once? Do I have to automatically switch to them and stuff like that.
What was the other thing? So you can use Zoom in the web.
You
So
can.
yeah, so you can have
I
it.
think that's a new tool then, because
Yeah,
I've never been able to use it in the web. That's like new to me.
if you already have it downloaded, I think it automatically opens the app.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
because that's the best experience. But you can use it in the web, and I think Google Chrome even have their special Zoom extension, which I think is kind of new as well, so that you don't actually have to download it onto your computer. But I'm sure the developers rushed out to get that one.
I know the first time I started using Zoom, it always required an application before you could do any of that stuff.
Mm. Yeah. Um, yeah, I also think because when people say it's cluttered, I don't think it's cluttered. I'm
Oh,
looking
I
down
don't
at
either.
the
Yeah.
bottom pane and I'm seeing, yeah, maybe 8 to 10 kind of icons of different things I can do, but they're all very useful, I think. And I also think that it's not that it's cluttered, it's that it's very powerful. So the simple thing, I mean, I got introduced to Zoom through somebody who use Zoom like as their go-to. And so if you do a Calendly meeting with them, it just automatically is Zoom. Well, that's how they send you that.
Yeah,
Because
that was another thing. Yeah, that was another thing that Zoom got right is that they integrated with a lot of popular services. So like they were basically at home with all the things that you are very comfortable with. So for example, if you're using Slack, you just type in the Zoom command and it opens a Zoom call. And for example, like you were saying, the Calendly is automatically linked to the Zoom. And you were also speaking about it's very powerful. Like what I do a lot of times when I'm doing like freelancing and like handing off my projects to clients is like I can remote control their screen from the Zoom call. So stuff like that just gives you freedom of being able to have the connection that you want with the user on the video chat.
yeah, exactly. And what's the other thing I was going to say about it? Oh yeah, with that. So first of all, side note, Calendly has a black founder. So everybody give your coin to Calendly, please. Second, um, so the other thing, again, this is like random, not necessarily advice from me, but Zoom also has an API. And so it allows people to access them, and they also have a marketplace. So they embrace people that use their API to create applications. One very simple instance is like a Zoom integration with a different app, but there are loads of transcription or like special recording type applications that live off being integrated with Zoom. And I would say, just in general, if you're creating a product and if people can use it in a different way, if there are different ways that you think people can use it and you don't necessarily want to invest in your in your development team to do that, an API is the best way to go. There's definitely a product that I'm looking at that doesn't have an API yet, and I'm kind of switching to one of their competitors for a certain project because I want to use an API. So even things like that on the developer side also make it really attractive and really powerful, because once you have API access into something, then you can tweak it to whatever you want. Then you can make your own little application on top. But even simple things like minimizing, I can minimize this call, have you at the top, type notes at the same time, do other things at the same time, and it still looks exactly the same. Small things like that make it really, really cool. Yeah. So how would you structure a case study normally? Is it like a block of text or?
So the way I kind of structure a case study is in three parts. I start with the problem that I was setting out to achieve. Then I'll go into the solution, and then I'll go into the outcome. So there's three parts. In the problem, you might say something like, for example, in my national role, we were experiencing X amount of users complaining about not being able to easily find results on the results page. Then my solution would be that the design that I came up with was like condensing the results page, reducing a lot of the information on the page, and just giving them what was necessary. And then the outcome would be, okay, what actually happened after we implemented that. So like I said before, we increased conversion by 1 million, and there were a lot more engagement on the page now because people could find the information and people actually viewed more results. So that was the three steps I follow any case study that I'm doing: the problem, the solution, and the outcome.
Okay, so problem, solution, outcome. And what do you do when you have the case study? So I'm guessing there's written stuff. There's obviously going to be screenshots of like before and after, maybe some cute graphs to show like users going up or something. How long would you recommend it be?
It can be as long as you really want to. I mean, like sometimes I'd like to keep mine very short and to the point, because at the end of the day, unless I'm really like a famous person, nobody's going to spend that much time reading what I have to say just yet. So what I tailor my case studies for employers. I know employers might not have a lot of time to really like read and engage with my case study, but they can see that I've done it, and they can see like the summaries of what I'm talking about. So that's why I kind of, whenever I do a case study, I do it as okay, if I was an employer reading this, how much time would they have to read it, and how can they quickly consume that information?
So how long are they on average?
Usually mine are around like six to 9 minutes long. So that's roughly like around 800 to 2,000 words.
Oh, you mean reading time?
Yeah, reading time. Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was a video, like a presentation.
Oh no, I don't do. Actually, I've never done a case study video. Actually, all of mine are text written with images and graphs.
Okay. Okay, so that's like about 2 pages then. How many do you have?
At National Raw, I had like around 7 to 10. I've got case studies. I've got more case studies from when I did freelance work. So I probably got like around 30 to 50 case studies. But I've only like written a good 10 to 15 of them.
Okay. Wow. So when you were saying, a design is cool, but a case study is better, how do you showcase your case studies? Or do you?
So yeah, most of the time I do them on, I used to do them on Medium blog, so medium.com. So I've done create them, give them a fancy title. But now what I do is I put them on my own website, so that I'm always driving traffic back to my own space rather than handing it over to someone else. So yeah, most of it it's a blog. I write them as blogs basically.
Okay. So it's like blog posts. I see. We'll find some. We'll dig some out and promote them. But I think, honestly, I'm like, let's do a case. Let's do like a 15 minutes, even if it's just you dissecting a case study and what you did and how it went. I said, does that mean, because you said you had like 7 to 10 at National Rail? Does that mean?
I've got some on my website if you want to like.
Oh yeah. Send whichever ones you want to share.
I'll send you one right now. The numbers might be getting me in trouble, bro.
What do you mean?
It's actually, they're on my website, so it should be fine. Actually, I'll do one on my Medium. I'll show you a case study I did on my Medium for the privacy app.
Okay. Okay, we'll share this.
Should you share screen or?
Oh yeah, if you're gonna talk through it, yeah, I'll share screen. Yeah. Ooh. No, I'll let you share your screen actually, and then you can talk through it. That'll be much easier. Okay, go ahead.
So yeah. So I did a case study on an app called Jumbo. Jumbo was a privacy assistant that basically helps you clear out your old Facebook post or and Twitter tweets that might get you in trouble. Even just clear like your Google search history and like your stock Facebook ads from like tracking you. And I really loved their application and loved their little personal mascot. And I thought that when I went through their UX for the first time, there was something they did really great, and there were other parts where I think like if they extended the mascot, it would have really sold me on using the assistant a lot more. So their onboarding was basically built around the whole idea of trust. They really wanted to allow you to know that you can trust their application in using the application to clean up your social media. I mean, they created this really cute mascot that how can you really not trust this mascot as you're going through the application? Even like right now, as if it's going to school. So I thought it was just really, really cute that they did this mascot, and they had like very, very quirky UX copy is on the text they had in the application. And the thing that I found that they did really good is that this is their permission. Usually when they go on apps, they ask you for permission to set notification. And this was their little prompt. I thought was really, really smart. It started off with a little I swear to never do this. As you can see, we've got many new features coming out. And as you hit continue, it then says, I, Jumbo, swear to never send you any annoying push notifications. And you can imagine like the little mascot just saying that to you. Is like, how can you not trust that mascot now? So then I went on and I hit the trust button. And then I thought what would have been actually better is if they animated that rather than showing me the default iOS notification prompt of it, yeah? Because this is very bland and doesn't fit into the bland of their design. But this is much cleaner. And it follows the brand of what they were going, where they were going. So it starts off what they were saying before, and it kind of like types it along, and then when you're then ready, it will then open the default iOS trust permission prompt. And then another thing. So yeah, another thing they did really, really well was just explaining to you what their different switches. They have switches in applications that allow you to turn on or off certain things, and they animated a lot of it, and they allowed you to see what I would do. But the thing that I had a problem with the application is that once you click anything, it will just automatically clear out your data for you when they wouldn't even give you a preview of that data. As soon as you click that, it just performed the action, which I thought was very, very bad. And when they were coming in, they started off with trust, that you can trust them to handle your data, but they won't give you the option to see what they're going to do before you hit that button. So I clicked that button, and I found out, oh wait, some of my data is about to get deleted. So it created that anxiety in me and that fear that maybe I don't want to do this again. So the only thing you could do is that you have to sign up before you can even see what they have done with your activity. There was no way to really preview that information. And if I remember, yeah, they had a skip button. So there are a few anxious moments I experienced that made me question trust me. Yeah, so basically they didn't have a back button. There was, so basically in the screen here, the screen over here, when I came here, I didn't know how to get back to the previous page. They had a help button over here, they had a sign in button, but they had this little hover thing over here, and there was no way for me to go back. The only way for me, I found out to go back is that if you hit the help button, they had these two options. So you can then either go to you forgot to Google password, or you can skip. And even the skip option doesn't then tell you that you can then go backwards. It just says, okay, we're going to skip this option. I didn't know if that meant something like, okay, we're going to go to the next step. So there was a lot of anxiety that I had of actually going back. So I just updated that. Instead of saying skip Google, just finish later, so that you know that you can come back to this instead. And that's basically what I did with And also I improved their design a bit more because before there was no background. So now you can see I added a background as a text, as an icon, and as a grayed out icon, which I don't think I'll go with this one now because you actually think that that's disabled. And yeah, this is what I was talking about when it came to what they were deleting. So they reviewed my Google account, but then they had a delete button straight away. I wanted to see what they were going to delete. So then what these were the only two options you had: either you resolve or you delete. You couldn't actually do nothing else in previewing what they were going to do with the data. So what I had done is I'd created an option for you to then, when you click on it, you can then have another step to then confirm that you want to delete the search rather than automatically going to delete the search. So then I improved that the prompt a bit more by making it fit more into their design. And then I also added an undo button as well in case you mistakenly deleted something. So these were just little things I did to just kind of like improve the trust of their application, because their whole thing was just based around trust and you trusting them with your social and Google and internet information. And there was a lot of areas that they fell short on. And this was around two years ago, so I don't know how they've improved the application now. But those are like some of the points that I analyzed in the case study. I mean, in the application case study.
Okay, thanks so much for sharing this because now I feel like I have more of an in-depth understanding of what a case study is and what it's used for. Because if it's not your product and you can't control what things go on behind the scenes, you can just give suggestions, right? But then my big question to you is, aren't you just doing a bunch of free work for these companies?
Yeah, but this is when I was still working at National Rail. So my whole thing is that I want to be known as like a go-to person, like your person for UX. So if people have like, I'm trying to like build up my profile of being a professional and a person of interest in the UX field. So that's why I kind of do these case studies to let people know about my insight, my way of thinking, how I tackle problems, the solutions I come up with, and just helping like boost my value in their eyes.
So your kind of, like you said, your kind of portfolio is your blog, of all your different suggestions to improve it. And I think actually this is really good, and it's a bit like projects when you code because it's showing your thought processes and how you approach solutions. So it's very easy for an employer to say, okay, this is how Efosa thinks, and this is actually really insightful, and I never thought of this that way. Let's hire him, kind of thing. So I think huge takeaway from today, and like very, very interesting because I never thought about, you know, case studies in that way. But then again, I'm still like, you're doing free work, and in your community, like in the UX UI community, people that do case studies, have you ever seen an example of someone um, doing a whole case study on a product and then having that team just take it and
Yeah,
implement changes?
well, I mean, I guess for example, you probably use Asana. They revamped their whole application like 2 3 months ago, and they released a whole blog post on how it took them 7 to 8 years to really like get that design right. So it's like they released that information, and the thing is that they can release that, but what a very smart UX designer will know is that if you store that information, it might not work for you because their users aren't the same users of your application. So unless you have the exact same audience as them, their UX works for their set of users. So those are the things that they've done to improve the UX for their users, that their specific problems. Those problems are unique to them, they're not unique to your application. So fair enough, you might use their design, whatever it is, but who says that's going to work for you? Their solutions are tried and tested with their own audience. They're not tried and tested with the audience that you have for your applications.
Wow. Okay. So really quickly, can you touch on how UX would change if you had an app? Let's say some sort of app that helps an older person suffering from Alzheimer's to remember to do daily tasks. Say you have an app. How would that UX be different to something like a Twitter?
So already, because you said older person, I'm not trying to even assume this is for every older person, but they might have visual impairment. So already the text and icons and buttons would be larger. And also another thing that the person who's doing the UX on that might research into is what they call habit forming. How can you help them? Because Alzheimer's is by some characters and loss of memory, and well, not loss of memory, but it's mix and matching the memory. So a way to like get over that is to help the user, because the habit forming part of your brain, it's always there, and they don't lose contact with that. So if you can help them form new habits, then you can help them applications. Ways of forming habits is either through sound or through repetitive tasks that then get ingrained into your psyche. So a lot of habit forming might be, and that might be like periodical notifications or vibration on their phone that kind of like just notifies their body to respond to the response. So there's different ways that you can like incorporate helping the Alzheimer's to perform repeat tasks. So it's just all about habit forming. Like you help that person form a new habit.
And that in comparison to a TikTok, which is again a specific case because its main aim is to suck you in. So that's why they have that infinite scroll and they have that completely large screen with no menu and things. But is there anything else on the app that you think, or for the UX of that attracts younger people as opposed to like
Yeah,
middle and
it's very haphazard is the term I'm looking for. Whereas like they have like almost virtual where the colors are like blurred to create different neon kind of colors like smashed together. So their UI is very like fresh and young and youthful and like breaking barriers, and an older person generation might not be used to like trying to learn a new user interface in that way. It might be too funky for them to like get into. So it's too there's too much going on in the UI for a lot older person to really get sucked into the information. For example, if I was trying to make that for an older generation, I would clean it all up and get rid of all the colors and just make it simple white icons so that you can see the screen a lot clearer.
And then when I think about something like a Facebook, for example, who has kind of aged with its founder, where it was made for uni students at the beginning, and now everyone says you're indicating your age if you're still on Facebook. How would the UX change, or is it because it didn't change because they've only just done a design revamp?
The thing about I have this feeling that right now every kind of design for UX has possibly been created, so there's nothing new to kind of like push and do with UX. We're all just doing is moving pixels to the same places on the screen. So I think like where Facebook is trying to move to, and they're doing a lot of work on, is now VR and like services. So if they understand that their growth is slowing down and not many new users or younger new users come to that platform, where they are to Instagram and that website. So they're focusing, okay, how can we expand into new frontiers? Like I don't even think there's a lot of innovation left in like doing design, like actual design on screens, and most of it's going to be pushed now to like AR, machine learning, and all that area of stuff and services. For example, in Africa, the things that really lead are text-based services. So they don't really care about UI and UX or UI. They care about UX, but UI over there, because a lot of the time they don't have data to consume to download that amount of user interfaces to their applications. So it's all text-based.
Wow, so you've touched on two things. So one, do you know about GPT-3 and everything that happened?
Yeah, that's
do you think GPT-3 is coming for the UI side of your career or the front end side of your career?
I think GPT-3 is actually going to help a lot of new people that are trying to get into coding, because then what I found would have helped me a lot is, okay, if I'd seen, okay, this is what is needed, this is the code that's needed to create a UI that I want, I can then learn from that code and then be able to replicate it. So I think it'll be the number one way to intro new people to actually start to code.
Interesting. And then the other thing is about UX UI in like low data environments, let's say. You said it's all text-based. Can you give an example of like the polar opposite of an app? So for example, ride sharing. If there's a text-based example that exists in Africa, what are the differences?
Well, for example, payment instead of like there's a lot of payment services in Africa that's based on text messages. So instead of you doing like sending money from like a PayPal account or a Stripe charge credit card, you send a text message that completes the transfer funds for you. So their banking apps are their text messages. So that's what's different over there. Another actually interesting banking app that's coming out, that's out in Europe, called Zelf. and they're purely for the new younger kids on the field where it's a texting app that allows you to have a bank account. So you just text them on WhatsApp. You text them in a messaging platform that you're comfortable with, whether that's WhatsApp, Messenger, or Telegram, and then you open your bank account through text message, and then you get access through the chatbot to your banking information.
Wow.
If you think about it, the younger generation, they live on like places like Instagram, WhatsApp, and Snapchat, and all those places are text or video platforms, but mostly text platforms where they can send text messages and stuff to each other. They don't live on like on Facebook, and they don't use desktop screens. They don't use tablets. They use their mobile screens, and they're all text based. They all use text based information to communicate with each other.
Okay, so what's the UX, and is there even a UI of a text messaging payment app? I'm imagining the difference between like before when we didn't have keyboards or touchscreen phones, it would be press one, press two to send money, whereas now you might want to type something. How would you improve that experience?
So the UX is now built into the, let's say, machine learning of their chatbots. So the UX might be if for example, you might speak in slang and being able to understand that slang so that the person is like type out a whole sentence to then get the information that they want. So that's where the UX really comes into play for text for text-based applications, is how quickly can they understand the language of the user to help them achieve a goal they're trying to achieve. And there might be like preset prompts that they have built into the text message that help them get to that very quickly.
Okay, so do you think machine learning is coming for your job then?
Nah, I don't think machine learning is going to come from my job. Well, nah. Actually, I haven't really thought about it too much, but I don't have to worry about it right now.
Are you sure? Because you're saying that like, I'm not attacking you and saying yes, an AI, model is going to come from your job, but if a machine can learn the best UX from the data inputs, so like someone putting in slang, and you're going to track like how many back and forth does it take?
That's the thing. Like the thing about a UX designer is that you might have all the data in the world. I remember, I'll give you a prime example. At National Rail, we're working on the rail card website, and our login page, or our first stop to the funnel to create your account, had the highest drop off of like 60% of users would leave that page, and we couldn't figure out why. So we had tested that. I come up with, okay, when you first go to that page, it just has to input your email address. And when I first came to that page, I didn't know how to like sign in. So I added a password field. The password field actually dropped and made it even worse. So we tried different variations of, okay, let's send them to different types of funnels, and that dropped it even more. So it's like you have to test, you have to keep, there's no one. So you might have an answer that the data says this is the way to go, but then you test and you see that it doesn't work. So I don't think a machine is ever gonna like get it right the first time. It takes trial and effort, and you have to have that insight and that inspiration and creativity to think of something new to try out. An example of how UX can improve things. Before Apple Pay and Google Pay, we would have to, when you're going to buy something, put in your information, go to the checkout, select your shipping stuff, and then you check out. But now Apple Pay is just one click. So they've got rid of those 3 to 7 steps into one button press and an authorization step. So and that's it. So that's what I call improving UX. Is okay, they've gone away with design and just made a button that then encapsulates all of those things to help you get to the end destination even faster. And that takes the creativity and inspiration to do.
I think maybe a little bit, but machines can also learn themselves the best way to, because that data that you have and that you're seeing, the model also has and is seeing and can tweak things as well to see like what's
the thing. I guess what you're trying to say is that computers will be able to be creative by themselves. But that's the thing. The hardest thing to really build into computers is creativity. Like creativity is really
No, I agree with you. I think you still may need a human for the creativity, but for when you're saying testing different links and things, a machine can do that by itself. And say, if I link to 3 different things, what's the drop-off rate? If I link to 4 different things, or if I link to this particular page, a machine can do all of that bit itself. But maybe you know, how it looks, or also taking into account that we're human beings and we understand things and all of that psychology and the, you know, round as a face and all of that stuff. I think that's going to take time for a machine to like do all of that stuff by itself.
Yeah, but you got also understand is that we humans have been doing that since like the start of human race. So for a computer to like, we're always advancing. We've been advancing that for millions and millions of years. So a computer is always going to be lagging behind because that's preset into who we are as humans. So I don't think a computer will ever be better at doing that than the human is.
Famous last words. No, I'm joking. No, this has been really, really interesting. And even me, myself, I now know about case studies and how they go. And I think that's some really good advice and something that we don't actually see, just going through things and switching things up. I think the last thing that I also wanted to ask is, which tools do you use as a designer?
So yeah, I use a vector-based design tool called Sketch. It's one of the leading vector-based design tools in the industry. There are others similar to it like Figma and Adobe XD. But for me, Sketch is the one that they started out and the one I've been using for like many, many years. They have like a very big plugin marketplace for you to like be even more productive with the application. Another tool that I kind of use is a prototyping tool called Marvel App, and I use that to just quickly test our designs and send off to like users to gather feedback and information on. And I might use like a survey tool like Google Forms to just go and collect some data that we need from our users.
Okay, so why Sketch and not Figma or Adobe?
Um,
I've heard the argument for
yeah.
Adobe. That's paid, right?
Yeah, you've got paid. Well, the thing about Figma is that their UI to me is hella clunky, and like they got different concepts that I have to wrap my head around to like use. But like if it was a case I was in a new team and they use Figma, I would learn Figma. But right now it's a case that I'm so familiar with Sketch and like I can be very much more productive with Sketch. I've got like my keyboard shortcuts set up, my plugins installed, all the stuff that make me productive ready on Sketch. And for me to then now try to be productive on Figma, it would just take me a little bit much longer to get a design done than it would on Sketch.
Meta
As they
Figma.
used to want.
Do a case study on Figma.
Oh wow, that would be interesting. Maybe even do a case study on Sketch. The thing about Sketch is that it was built for the Mac, and a lot of the Mac interface was like already familiar with, so they had that going for them in the UX. So, yeah.
But would you say, it's a bit like the whole Apple thing? Would you say that's something being built for a specific user base or user experience that's good? But then depending on the competition on the market, doesn't that hurt the sales?
Eventually, I feel like Sketch are gonna branch out into either being a web-based platform or releasing Windows because it's more market reach basically. You can't reach that many. Even though Mac is very popular, Windows still owns the market share of the computers. So I think soon they will. They're making a lot of money right now, not moving off of Mac, but eventually they will be either move onto the web or move onto Windows. I think they'll be shooting themselves in the foot if they don't.
Yeah, that's my own personal, like, it's great if everything is tight in one platform, but that kind of bondage is not something that I support. I mean, it's great if things are easier, but I don't want to be stuck.
Basically, a big thing. This is not actually how we touched on this. I'm surprised. A big push in UX now that's actually being pushed for like a good 2-3 years is accessibility. So you always want to make stuff accessible to everyone because if you think of it as a business standpoint, the more people you can make it accessible to, the more money you can have access to. So right now, if we take Sketch, they're not accessible because they're only on Mac. But then if they were on the web, they're accessible to everyone.
But even on, again, this is like another conversation, but even on iPhone, I think iPhone does win for accessibility because I think there was a TikTok that went
And that's
viral.
and that's where the HCI comes into play.
Yeah.
Computer interaction.
Yeah, and you can tell that that's what I was about to say, you can tell that they've really studied it and they've really studied how somebody, you know, who can't see or who can't hear is going to interact with
And the problem with doing that with Android devices is that fair enough, Google owns Android, but Samsung and all these other people make their own operating systems for their devices and do accessibility in their own way. So there's no one unified way of meeting accessibility standards for Android, but it is for iOS.
Yeah. I think that is the big difference between iOS and Android is that you know what you're going to get, and so because they don't have as much, they can really focus on improving and maximizing something like accessibility, as opposed to with Android you have phones with different screens, different sizes, different layers of Android, which yeah, that personalization is great, but
It's very messy.
yeah, like is it slightly discriminatory? Like is it truly accessible? I guess the answer is no. Whereas if you know what you're going to get out of the box, then it's great. So yeah, um, I was just gonna say thank you. This was so good. I'm
Yeah,
off to make my Figma case study now, and this was really really insightful. Where can we find you? And is there anything else that you want to promote?
yeah. So my on Twitter, my at is Efosa SOI. The same thing on Instagram, and I've actually got nothing to promote, but just learn UX. I think a good place for you to learn UX is just on Medium.com. They have a lot of UX case studies there. There's also another actually there's an institute called Bayonard Institute that do a lot of UX research for free, and if you subscribe to the newsletter, they send it to you like periodically, so you can get understanding into like what UX standards are out there and what companies are like big time companies are failing in certain UX areas, so that you can like always remind yourself to be attentive to your users' needs. So yeah, Bayonard Institute.
Wow. Okay. Great. We'll show that. Thank you so much. I'm gonna stop streaming now.